Welcome to Deep Dive, and just another week of bringing to you some of the things going on behind the scenes here at First Baptist. We have two kind of important Sundays coming up here. This Sunday is Communion, and then we are also first, if I get it right, the first Sunday of each month is Starting Point.
Yes.
Right. So explain that to everybody who's watching.
Okay, Starting Point, we're going to have it every month at the beginning of each month, like you just said. And we are going, the idea is if you are new to the church, you have questions about the church, and you just want to sit down and talk about them, we're going to have some time in my office right here, and we're gonna just talk about what it looks like at First Baptist. We're looking at our core values, our vision, our mission, and just giving, just dipping your toe in the water a little bit concerning, what your future may be at First Baptist Church, or just some questions about the church name. But there are a lot of questions that come out, faith questions. We even invite people, who are on their journey of faith to say, hey, I have a question about this. So Starting Point is that process. Now, another question comes out of that. How do I become a member of the church? Next step is going to be offered 4 different times this year as seminars on Saturday morning. Okay. So we're gonna get that all together. The reason we do it that way is we want people in their life groups. We want you to be involved in your life group because many of the people that aren't members yet are in life groups already. So we want you in your life group. So we'll be getting the dates out for that. Looks like there'll be one probably at the end of February, early March, so we don't get mixed up in the Easter season. But those are the two places where people get information. The Starting Point is one of those things that creates a conversation, and of course my office is open so that people can touch base with me. But and Amy is here with me, so they get to know my wife and just kind of get an idea of what's going on at the church.
So Starting Point is during the life group times, 10 o'clock, right?
Yes, 10 o'clock.
So Starting Point, and then eventually, if you're interested, then you can take the next steps. So
Did you get that?
I did. I don't know if that was intentional. I thought I just made that up on the spot.
Z would be so proud of you right now. Z would be so proud of you.
So come check that out. That's this Sunday in Pastor's office during life group time. It's a good way to get to know what First Baptist is all about, if you're interested. And then on the 13th is our annual business meeting. That'll be, I believe, in the FLC.
Yep.
And we'll have some light refreshments, and we'll have that quick meeting during that time. And then that evening is also Super Bowl Sunday. If you know me, you know who I'm rooting for and why. If not, you can come ask me later.
Go Rams, right? Go Rams.
And check with your life study leader about what your group is doing that night. There are no children's ministries that evening, but check with your life study leader for the other life studies about what is going on that evening. That's the announcement section of this morning. Why don't you said you have wanted to talk about a point here that's been sticking with you since Sunday.
Just this quote. We talked about 2 Sabbath controversies on Sunday morning with the disciples picking up grain and eating it in the field, kind of pulling a Ruth, and then the man with the withered hand, where Jesus steps in and heals his hand on the Sabbath. And of course, there's questions about the Sabbath. There's supposed to be no work on the Sabbath. We had one thing that came through it was talking about, and this was really kind of technical, the law of necessity and mercy, that as the Lord of the Sabbath and as the technicality that the Pharisees were trying to use, it was invalid because the disciples were hungry, necessity. Man with the withered hand, mercy. So as I looked at that, I saw this quote, a guy on Nolan, old commentary, Word Biblical Commentary, said the approach of Jesus to the Sabbath keeping is driven by the conviction that the love of God is inseparably linked to the love of neighbor. Therefore, what dishonors my neighbor cannot honor God, and whatever leaves my neighbor in his suffering can only be evil. And we think about the Good Samaritan, we think about all these stories that Jesus framed those ideas, framed that reality of what true worship is, because the Sabbath was all about worship. And it gives us this insight into God's heart for us as we worship God and we cry out to God together and we walk together in community. But the outpouring of the vertical relationship with God leads to a horizontal, that those horizontal relationships, the people we engage with every day, an act of worship is really being there and loving our neighbor. And it kind of caught me because the Pharisees were so wrapped up in all this stuff that they totally missed it. And then when they, you see some of them going, wait a second, and then they just we see them just this angry mob start to develop. And, you see that when I was in 1 Timothy last night with a group I was with, and, just we have to be so careful about missing the main thing. Because when Jesus was moving, walking through the disciples, they're picking up, and he uses David at the tabernacle and all that law of necessity and mercy as he's dealing with the Pharisees. But he just keeps moving in mission. And and then we see as he keeps going, he heals the man with the withered hand. He gets his disciples, administrative stuff. He goes to miracles on the plateau, and then we get the compressed Sermon on the Mount from Luke, which is really interesting if you never studied that, because we always study Matthew, but Luke really does a great job. And it's just, Jesus was always on mission.
Right.
And the words and works of Jesus, I think I said Sunday, people always say, boy, I wish I could spend the day with Jesus. Here's a day, here's 3 of them with Jesus. And how do we apply that to our lives? And that is recognizing that worship is connected to not only the love of God, but leads into the love of our neighbor.
This is like the 4th or 5th time in 2022 I've heard a connection about how linked love of neighbor and love of God are. One study I was looking at even basically said, like, you can't have love for God without also developing love for your neighbor. And I was chuckling because I thought the Pharisees were all going into these details, and sometimes we make up games with my kids, and I don't know if you've ever done this with your kids. We make up games, and the point of the game is to have fun, right? But what inevitably happens is there's one of us that gets so sucked into the details that we forget the eventual intention was to have fun. And we're making all these rules and all these other things, and we've lost sight of the fact that we're supposed to be having fun as a family. Instead, it's about all those other things. That's kind of the same thing here. Like, we have all of these processes and things going on, and we've made Christianity very it's its own community, its own culture. It's got its own identity. It's got its own processes and rules and its own thing. And it's easy to get lost in those details and lose sight of the mission of, that Jesus was always on mission. He didn't let those things sidetrack him from what he was supposed to be doing in the Father's will. And
look at, I'm thinking about it. It makes me, Jesus, we had all these things. Okay, you're talking about all these systems and processes. When Jesus left, he said, go therefore and make disciples of all nations. Discipleship, right? Transformation. Baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Connection to the family. Teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you, and behold, I'm with you always to the end of the age. In other words, just teaching, he's speaking to his disciples, he's saying, teach them it, and it just continued. Because they taught, and then, elders emerged in the leadership, and they taught, and then you have this progression, and then he says, hey, and don't worry about it, I'm still with you. And the simplicity of those moments, kind of like Lincoln and his Gettysburg Address, it was so short, but it was there was simplicity to it, but there was depth to it. Jesus, when he spoke, we need to listen. And when we read these things, we need to recognize, as we look at vision and mission of our lives, not just the church, we work on that all the time, but the vision and mission of our lives, what are the things in our life that don't quite match up or maybe taken away? And I get excited as I look at what God did through his Son and that transforming power that is available to all of us in our lives. I was talking to a guy about this morning, and because he was curious, we were both sitting there working in my favorite restaurant there, and we were sitting there, and then we just struck up this conversation and started talking about priorities and his life. It was so just interesting, man. And but we can love our neighbor not because of who we are, but because of what God is doing in us.
And you talk about simplistic but deep. The fact that Jesus could sum up everything else in the Bible with love God, love the neighbor as yourself. That's just, they all come back to stemming out of that relationship of loving God and loving others.
Well, and the Father had the plan, because when the Ten Commandments were developed, it was all about that.
Yeah.
And so that the consistency of God's word. So yeah, exciting times. Exciting times. There's stressors. There's all this stuff going on around us. But you know what? These are exciting times because I think the gospel shines even brighter in the midst of the chaos.
So thanks for joining us this week. I encourage you to check out Starting Point if you're interested in getting to know more about the church, or checking us out online and connecting with one of Pastor's sermons, or just finding ways to get connected to God and to continue to allow that to flow through us in our relationships with others. And have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
God bless you.